Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you again for joining us for MTI's Facebook Live series celebrating Wellbeing Week in Law. Today is the final day of Wellbeing Week in Law, and we will discuss emotional well-being. Welcome, Kelly.
Thank you.
So let's start out by talking about emotional well-being. The Institute for Wellbeing in Law defines it as valuing emotions, developing an ability to identify and manage emotions for health, to achieve goals, and to inform decisions. And of course, to seek help for mental health when needed. Let's start out by talking about stress. What are some signs and symptoms of stress?
Stress is an interesting one because I think we all kind of manifest and show stress differently. It shows up all of us in a different way. And of course, there are some physical components of stress, which we touched upon on Monday, but our emotions and our mental health is definitely impacted when we are stressed as well. And I think one of the most common signs of stress is when people find themselves having a shorter fuse, if you will. So they are quicker to anger, they are quicker to feel frustrated, they are quicker to, want to give up. They have less patience with other people. And if that's something that is not in your normal personality, it probably is because you are experiencing a high level of stress, whether or not you may actually recognize what's causing that stress.
Let's talk about the different types of stress. There's something called eustress and something called distress. Can you tell us a little bit about the different types of stress?
I love that you're asking this because a lot of people don't realize what eustress is and that it actually can have a negative impact on you. And eustress is what we would consider positive stress. And I know that sounds like two words that actually should never go together at all. But eustress is when there's something that is viewed as positive happening, but it actually causes stress. So, one of the biggest examples is getting married, right? When you're getting married and planning a wedding, and obviously that's a joyful occasion, but anybody who's ever planned a wedding or even been part of a wedding know that there comes stress along with that. And that stress isn't always a positive stress. And so, eustress is stress that's triggered from what we would consider a positive event. And then distress is the opposite. So distress is stress that's triggered by a negative event, like maybe having too much work or working in a hostile working environment. Obviously, things like breakup and divorce would be considered distress as well. Again, it's important to recognize when we think about possible stress triggers that sometimes good things that are going on around you can also, unfortunately, cause stress in your life as well.
How can mass tort professionals create a proactive plan for how to take care of themselves when stressed? How can we get ahead of the stress?
I think the biggest thing is to really take the time to recognize how you manifest and how you react to stress, and really be able to incorporate activities and routines in your life that will help counteract some of that stress. Things like making sure that you get enough sleep, maybe walking every morning, journaling, listening to music, having your go-to calm meditation that helps you, right? Like really just making sure that you are prepared to handle stress and that you actually have a plan, when you know that things are going to get a little bit stressful. And it could be as simple as knowing that maybe you have some catching up to do at work, but at lunchtime on this day, there's an office event or a baby shower, planning around that. So instead of letting it stress you out on that day, planning ahead to say like, okay, I know Friday, I need to get ahead. I was going to work through lunch, but I can't. So what can I do instead with your time management or whatever it may be so that the stress actually doesn't impact you as much?
In mass tort, a lot of us are exposed to the hurt and pain of others. And it said that when, what you see and hear becomes part of your own experience. Mass tort professionals spend a lot of time speaking with people. They've only reached out to an attorney because they've been injured in some way. Some minor injuries, serious injuries, cancer, sexual assault. So we are often exposed to the hurt and pain of others. How can people working in mass tort really mitigate that exposure and make sure that while they're still, giving a listening ear and wanting to help people, that they also protect their own emotions from becoming overwhelmed with the trauma of other people?
I think there's a fine line, especially for everyone that works in this industry, because obviously, you are desiring to deliver the best client care and the best client relationship as possible, which includes compassion and caring and things like that. But we also want to make sure that we are not accidentally absorbing the burden that other people have gone through into our own lives, because that, of course, is going to elevate our stress. And so, I think really being mindful before you get on those calls, even if it means like having a conversation with yourself and recognizing like, I can be supportive, I can be compassionate, I can be here for this person during this call, but I don't have to take it on as my own. And also, I think recognizing that you can better serve those clients when you can learn to not be stressed out because of it, right? Because nobody wants to be on a phone call with someone who is stressed or who is on edge or who is short fused. And I think we have to recognize that by letting go of some of the burdens that are being shared in those client calls, we actually can better serve those clients than if we take those burdens home with us and dwell on them. So, it's really coming from that place of service and recognizing, if our cup is not full, we cannot fill others. And one of the biggest ways, fastest ways to empty your cup is to take on some of that emotion of the clients and of those conversations. And, I think just recognizing that I just have to let this go so that I can show up in a more fully place for our clients is really important.
Great. I want to talk a little bit now about trauma stewardship. You can tell us a little bit about what that means and how can mass tort firms create a culture of trauma stewardship to support their attorneys and paraprofessionals.
This term typically is used to describe the overall practice of caring, for oneself, kind of like what we're already talking about, in order to remain effective, right? And really recognizing that there's this really fine line between being the sufferer and being the helper. And, we really want to make sure that we are being cared for and we are caring for ourselves so that we can turn around and we can be the helper and not the sufferer. And so I think when it comes to what the work environment can do, one of the biggest things I know that happens in a work environment, especially in, when there's a larger company, so larger firms where there may be more employees, is, the environment is really hard to control. And I think really staying tight on top of that work culture and making sure that any potential hostile work environments or relationships are taken care of. I know that there's a lot of bosses out there that take on the mentality of, you guys are adults, work it out kind of thing, because not wanting to be a micromanager, not wanting to get involved into people's, relationships. But I think it's important to really keep an eye on, is this something that is, can be managed between the two of them? And then at what point does it start to impact the entire office? And when does that need to happen and step in? So I think that's one piece, which I know can be a difficult piece for a lot of bosses or, office directors and things like that. I think the other piece is being supportive in your employees in managing their stress. So, if there's an employee that seems like they're frazzled or they're not acting like themselves, recognizing that, saying, hey, go ahead and why don't you leave an hour early today or take an extra long lunch, is actually going to help them be more productive than trying to keep them there working through the end of the day. And sometimes we just have to give the grace to our employees, to recognize, I know you're stressed, and I don't, and allowing them, giving them permission to go and to take care of that in themselves.
Let's talk a little bit about emotional first aid. We have a first aid kit to help repair our physical wounds with Band-Aids and ointment and different things like that. If we wanted to create a first aid kit for our emotions, what type of things should we put in there, particularly when we're talking about the emotional injuries that we may encounter in our work?
I think one of the best things to put in there is your emotional support system. So whoever those people are around you that you can have a discussion with, you don't feel judged, you feel well supported, they allow for positivity and stay away from that negativity, whether it's your best friend or your significant other or a sibling. You want to put those people into that kit, because really, and we touched upon this yesterday when we talked about social well-being, it's really important to be able to have that outlet, that person that you can go to and you can talk to when you are dealing with and trying to process emotions. Mm-hmm. The other thing I think that we have to put in that emotional kit is grace. And that's just having grace with ourselves. And I think that especially for professionals, there's an underlying belief that potentially showing emotion is a sign of weakness, or a sign of, being unprofessional. And that really, though, holding in our emotions is really just bottling them up. And we know that for anyone who's ever tried to hold in emotions, there's no good that ever comes out of that. And so, I think if it's needing to burst into tears in the bathroom, give yourself some grace and recognize that that is part of processing emotion. Right. And sometimes the only way and the best way to process emotion is to allow yourself to go through and to feel that emotion and not do that. I'm being such a wimp right now, or a baby because I'm crying, not doing that. I'm so dumb, I shouldn't even be upset about this situation, right? Like, we are the biggest critics of ourselves. And I think we are the first ones to try to dismiss why we are feeling the way we are, when really having a little bit of grace and just being able to validate, I'm upset for whatever reason, and I'm just going to let myself be upset and manage, and really process those emotions instead of trying to do like an emotional bypass.
We've been talking all week about these, dimensions of wellness, the sort of 5 that we've been able to highlight. So I feel, our audience has a great understanding of, how these things come together. Can we talk a little bit about, how all of the dimensions, your physical well-being, your spiritual, career, social, emotional, how do they all work together to give us sort of a general feeling of well-being? And how do we know when one may be out of alignment?
Most images of well-being are shown in a circle with each of these components that we've been talking about all week, a piece of the pie, if you will. Right. And so obviously when one piece is missing, you don't have a complete circle. And that, I think, is the biggest thing to, picture in your mind. If you think about like a wheel, being able to roll effectively, if it has a piece missing, the wheel will not work, right? Like, it's not going to go anywhere. And I think the same is true for us. When we're missing one or more pieces of our health and wellness, we don't have that overall wellness. And we start to see breakdowns. We start to see breakdowns in our emotions. We start to see breakdowns in our relationships. We start to see breakdowns in our, physical health and wellness. And so, because they're all interrelated, because they're all part of that circle, it's important to be able to maintain them. And when it comes to an imbalance, I think it goes back to knowing that something's just not flowing. I think we all get that feeling where we're like, something just isn't right, whether we're not feeling right, maybe we're feeling detached from the work that we're doing, maybe we're feeling dissatisfaction in some area of our life, or a desire to have more. And those are all signs that some piece of our well-being is missing, or it's ready for more, right? It's ready for some kind of growth, right? It doesn't always have to be absence. It certainly can be like, I'm ready for more fulfillment in this area. And, when you feel like that, it's important to stop, really just stop and do like a mental check of, are my relationships fulfilling right now? How do I feel physically? Am I happy at work? How do I feel mentally? Do I feel stressed? Am I giving myself enough self-care? But it's important to do that inventory check again, because so many professionals just go, it's just life. You can't be happy every day, and that's when it starts to manifest into bigger problems and really start to seep into all of the different areas of your life.
We have talked a little bit this week about the Wellbeing in Law course that MTI is going to offer. So can we talk a little bit more about that, about some of the components of the course, and what are some of the activities that the learners will be able to participate in within the course?
Yeah, so we are super excited about the Wellbeing in Law course. And of course, we're very also just happy to be able to offer it for free to our entire community, because we're recognizing how important well-being is, especially in the Mass Tort industry, to be able to be there, not only in your work roles, but also for the clients that you have connections and, speak with on a daily basis as well. So the 5 themes that we've been talking about this week with physical health, social health, spiritual health, intellectual health, and so forth are all modules that are even more developed than what we've been able to bring to you in the 30 minutes that we've had each day. And so you'll be able to dive in, you'll be able to, do more exploring in terms of what each of those components of wellness means, as well as have a chance to kind of experiment and dive into what it might look like to foster that area of wellness. So we have some great meditations in there when it's time for your emotional wellness. We have some fun ways to make connections in the social wellness module, and it's all self-led. So the great thing about it is you can go through it at your own pace. You can go back through it again and again and again as needed. And so I think it's going to be a really great tool that a lot of people in this industry are going to be able to utilize.
Any other tips that you want to give our audience around any of the topics we've discussed this week? It's been a great week, but if there's anything else that you feel like you want to discuss, we've got a couple of minutes left.
I just want to reiterate how important it is to believe that you can be full in all of these areas, and that just because you're a mom or a dad and you're busy and you have long hours, or maybe you have a big commute, like none of those factors should actually discount your ability to have wellness in all of those areas. And really, it's just, making sure that those things are a priority. And I do believe that we are often in a culture that tells us, work yourself ragged, run yourself into the ground. I think when it comes to career success, there's very often that burn the candle at both ends. That's the only way to get your promotion or to build your business. And I don't believe that that's true at all. And I think that we accept that. And because we accept that, we think well, if I don't have time to go to a gym, then so be it. If I don't, if I don't have time to journal every morning, it's because I'm going for that promotion. And that's not true at all, right? I think it's recognizing that making time for the gym, that journaling every morning, that going home an hour early when your boss says you need to go home and take a break is actually what is going to help us grow both personally and professionally. And so really just take those things seriously and, put any of that guilt aside. I know, Jerice, you probably understand this as a working mom. I always struggle with that guilt of, I've been at work all day. I haven't seen my kids. I really feel like I need to take that walk because emotionally I'm feeling a little angry or upset. And then I feel bad, right? I feel bad like I'm leaving my kids. And then I stay home and it's never good, right? I'm never the loving mother that I would like to be, because I actually should have just taken that 20-minute walk to kind of cool down and give myself some space. And so, I think just that, and whether it's, it might be your significant other, it may be the friend that you put to voicemail because you're like, I just need time right now to not talk to anybody. And it's important to tell that little guilty voice to be quiet and recognize that we have to put ourselves first, or none of those other things are going to matter.
It has been a great week. We are so happy all of you who have tuned in. We thank you so much. We hope that you've learned a little something and are now going to start focusing on your own well-being. Please look out for information regarding the course. And again, thank you all for joining us today. Have a great weekend. Happy Mother's Day to all the moms, the grandmoms, the moms-to-be, the moms of fur babies, all the moms out there. Have a great Mother's Day weekend. And we thank you so much for joining us at the Mass Tort Institute.
Thank you.